smart loop. It's slightly counterintuitive. Uh, so let's say I'm putting an IoT system in public toilet, which ensures that public toilets are cleaner, and people are coming and using it pay per use. It's probably much more natural to think that the guy who is paying for the service is my customer, but that is not the case. The guy who's paying is paying to the cleaner, the toilet, the guy who maintains the toilet, right? So it's his customer or her customer, and the cleaner is in turn contributing to the revenue of toilet operator. And typically, the operators are small business people who maintain several toilets in a city. Even they are not my customers because they will not pay me. They said that uh, मेरा धंधा तो चल रहा है. What will you add to my business, right? You cannot. So even if I am able to tell you to them that your revenue will increase twice, they will just say that if my revenue increases twice, I cannot just pay you that revenue, right? Otherwise, what is in it for me? Uh, and plus, there is a big upfront cost. So if I put a IoT system in the toilet, it costs some money, and no toilet operator will basically give me that money, saying that okay, you put this system and I'll see the result. They will see the result only when only then they'll buy my solution, right? So though they are not my customers, uh, government is not my customer, because if you have worked with government in the past, uh, uh, you'll know that government does not pay anybody. Government can give you MOAs, memorandum of understandings, letter of intents. They can give you some support in terms of reaching out to people and finding money. But government, if your startup is dependent on government paying you money, your startup is as good as dead. So government doesn't pay me, right? So who's my customer? And who's my consumer? Consumer is obvious, that the guy who's using the toilet is my consumer, right? In her life, I'm adding the most value because it's pretty cheap. And then my secondary consumers are, of course, the cleaners, whose job is getting easier because now they have water, now they have a prompt response from the government to change to fix the things that are wrong with the premises. But my customers were neither of them. And my customers were people who were giving out CSR money and philanthropy money to make the make to invest in the toilets, right? And they wanted their brands to be put on the toilets. So my customers were actually people who were paying money to install my system and do a branding exercise with me. So this probably is slightly uh, non-intuitive to start with, and it was to me at least. But then I learned this to make distinction between your customer and the consumer, and to understand both pain points, because ultimately, uh, if you don't understand what your customer wants, they'll never pay you. If you don't understand what your consumer wants, your solution will not work. Uh, and in B2C, the customer is typically the same as consumer, so that is not the problem. But when you go to B2B, B2G, that becomes a problem. So those are some of the learnings that from, of course, these are just a simplistic view. There were a lot of learnings, 2 year worth of hard work. There's a lot of failures, a lot of learnings. Uh, and then what happened was COVID hit India, and because of which all the funding in public spaces dried up. So we tried to run with the funding that we had for some time, and then we ran dry. So we had to close down Smart Loop, but sanitation is a big problem in India anyway. So one of the biggest real estate firms in India, Brigade Group, they approached us, and they said that your solution is something that real estate can use. And that is how we ended up making Sun IoT. Sun IoT is just an amalgamation of two words, sanitation and IoT. And Sun IoT then is now solving the same problem for uh, not for public toilets, but for premium office spaces. Now, see the difference, and here, although the idea is same, although the toilet remains the same, public toilets थोड़ा ज़्यादा गंदी होती है, पब ऑफिस वाली थोड़ा कम गंदी होती हैं, बट देन uh, but then the market is entirely different, the solution is entirely different. So one of the things that one of the learnings that I have there is that uh, focus is very important, use case focus is very important. So even if, so for example, just to give a small example, if you are making Parle-G biscuit and if you are making Marigold biscuit, both of them are biscuit, both of them use packaging, both of them are consumed by the same people, both of them are sold on Kirana store, both of them probably use maida and sugar and all those things, and both of them has very similar manufacturing facility, and yet the two businesses are entirely different. The brand positioning is different. The people who the appeal of these things are very different. So that is, this is one of the learnings that I took from Smart Blue moving to Sun IoT, is that customer segmentation and then understanding customers problem or consumers problem has to be very, very specific to the use case. You cannot sell Marigold to somebody who likes Parle-G, even though both of them are probably the same thing with slightly different taste. Right? From a business point of view, they probably take the same things. So that is the brief of my journey up till here. Of course, this is a simplistic view that I could cover in probably little more than 20 minutes. Uh, lot of you ask questions about investments. What are the investments? How can we find investors? Uh, and and how to approach that whole problem. And many of you probably have ideas that you want to develop and get invested with. So first of all, let me just give you my overview of investments, how the investments in India work, and give you some sort of bucketization of what when you talk about investment, what do you really talk about, right? So broadly speaking, there are two kinds of investors. One is called institutional investors. Actually, three kinds: institutional investors, other is syndicate, the people who invest small amount but in groups, and then there are individual investors who have HNIs but can invest small amounts in early stage startups, right? Coming to uh, and feel free to ask question. And Uday, if there is any interesting question that I can address, please let me know. I can talk to that. As I said, one-way traffic is never very helpful. Uh, so anyway, uh,
Sure, sir.
so right. Okay. Hi. So coming to the stages of the startup, when you just start up, when you are very small, you have an idea, and you have some sort of validation of that idea, and you are making a prototype. That is when you go to an angel investor. And an angel investor is somebody who comes at a very early stage, who takes a lot of risk with you, but invests small amount in you, and that amount may vary from anywhere from 5 lakh to maybe 70 lakh, 80 lakh, even $100,000, which is about 70 lakh rupees. Yeah. So angel investors again have a different size with which they invest, but you can find an investor to invest in you from anywhere from even sometimes 2 lakh rupees. So those are the first investor that you'll most likely approach, uh, and then after that comes the seed investment. So angel investment is done when you have prototype, and you have shown that the prototype works. And when you show that the prototype works, and when you show that it solves somebody's problem, and somebody will be ready to pay for it, then you get a seed investor. Seed investor will typically invest from $100,000 onwards, all the way to $100,000, about 60 lakh, 70 lakh rupees, uh, from all the way to a crore or two crores, or 3 crores, 4 crores kind of money. Right. So that is, and that again, seed also has a lot of range. Some seed investors only invest 50 lakh rupees. Some invest all the way up to 3 4 crore rupees. And once that happens, uh, that is when you grow your startup, you attract a lot of customers, you show some validation at some scale, And seed investment takes you to a matured place where then you can expand. And that is where Series A comes into picture. Or so there is another level between seed and Series A, which is called pre-series investment. Uh, and Series A comes into picture at about $1 million, $2 million, or $3 million, which is maybe 5 crore to 10 crore rupees. And then then onwards, there is Series B, Series D, Series, and so on and so forth, all the way to when you can exhaust the alphabets. But before you exhaust the alphabets, at some point of time, the company goes public when it is nested, when it is listed in stock exchange or something. So every company aspires to go from angel investment to going public. Once you go public, you become listed at one of the stock exchanges, at which point of time your company has already reached a very good maturity. You are already from a startup, you already are a company, right? So not many company go to public. I don't think Flipkart has gone to public yet. uh, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. But some do. So a lot of these B2C companies also go to public to raise investment. And it really depends on the domain that you are in, the kind of investor enthusiasm that they have in you, and things like that. Right. So this is a broad overview of how investors landscape look like. But investment is if the investment is the first question that you are asking before starting your entrepreneurship journey, then in my opinion you are doing something wrong. The first question really shouldn't be, where do I find investment? And of course, I understand, having coming from a middle class background, I understand that money is always a problem. uh, you cannot do things without money. uh, but what I'm saying is that uh, many entrepreneurs that I have seen, or many wannabe entrepreneurs at least that I have seen, have this romantic picture of startup where uh, you'll get an idea, you'll implement that idea, and then you go to an investor will invest a few lakhs or few crore rupees in you, and then you'll make an office and your company will already do well. That typically doesn't happen. What happens is you spend a lot of time in uh, developing your idea, and once that happens, developing your consumer and developing your customers, and then show the value, that this is the value that I'm offering. This is the value that somebody's life, by virtue of this, is getting better, or somebody is getting a service that she desires, or something like that, right? And you prove that somebody at some point of time will be ready to pay for this. Once that happens, then you start looking for people who are interested in your domain, who are investors who are interested in your domain. For example, if I am from IoT, I would much rather look for people who have invested in IoT and who are generally interested in tech enabled startups. Right. I will not go for somebody who has invested in Flipkart to invest in my company, because they will not understand IoT. They will say that this is not my domain. Typically, investors are very finicky about what domains they want to invest in. So even though the investor landscape is pretty wide, if you have an idea and if you have proved that it's worth, you'll have to be focused on finding somebody who understands it, who invests in the similar domain. Otherwise, you'll just if you just spray and pray, you'll just spraying your pitch deck to a lot of people who will not be interested, and they'll require a lot of bandwidth, lot of manpower, lot of emails, calls, and you'll not reach anywhere. And ultimately, you'll basically just say that, this is not my business, I should just find a job. So focus is very important even when you're looking for investment. So I'll stop here and probably go on answering questions and queries if anybody has. Uh,
Rahul sir, hello.
Thank you, Rahul sir. Sir, a question has come in chat box. What
what
risk
risk?
and
Sir,
sacrifice
I have a question
does
for
such
you.
an enterprise
Uh,
demand?
yes, गुलफिशा आप पहले
Somebody.
पूछिए.
Yes, sir. Sir, what risk sacrifice does such an enterprise demand?
Okay. I think I think I know where this question is coming from. I have been in the place where I have been perplexed by this. What is the risk and what is the reward and all those things. Okay, so very briefly speaking, if you are into entrepreneurship for the right reasons, I think it'll demand a lot of sacrifice. It is really hard. And everybody tells you how hard it is. Everybody tells you it's hard. Nobody really tells you how hard it is. It's one of my favorite songs actually. Everybody told me it's hard. Nobody told me how hard. It's going to be really, really hard. So you'll have to sacrifice. But what I'll suggest is sacrifice with your life. Do not sacrifice with your family's life. And what do I mean by that is, uh, please be mindful of people around you. Maybe I don't think you're any one of you is married right now, but at some point of time you'll be married, at which time you'll have to worry about your wife. Right now you have to worry about your parents, maybe your brother or a sister. So I mean, you cannot of course some of our parents are much more supportive than others, but by all means, do not take your family for granted. You can play with your life, you can take a lot of risk, and I'm telling you, it's very hard, but it's also very, very enjoyable. As hard it is, it's equally enjoyable, and it's almost like a addiction. Once you go entrepreneurship, you're just basically spoiled for everything else, because you do things, you see things day in and day out. Uh, but that is the fun part of it, yes. But there's also a lot of sacrifice. One of the sacrifices that you'll have to do is, very early on, is not given to peer pressure. So all of your peers will be getting jobs. They'll be earning very well. Some of them will be buying cars, homes, all those things, while you will be basically calculating, how do I pay the bills for the next month. And believe me, I belong to one of a very good, one of the best institutes in India, IIT Bombay, and I uh, have the same problem. Uh, and some points of time, um, it's not that I could not find a job. Every time I had tried to find a job, it has taken me less than 10 days to find a job, a well-paying job. But still, sometimes it happens that I am pressed to understand, how do I pay my employees, how do I pay my own bills. And this is not just with me. Almost every successful entrepreneur that I've seen. Uh, I don't know if you know Kunal Behel, one of the main co-founders of Snapdeal. Snapdeal is not doing very good right now, but at one point of time, it was the second best e-commerce startup in India. And at that point of time, just before that, uh, he himself has personally told me that he had just 20,000 rupees in his account, and he has done his masters from US. Pretty well educated guy. Microsoft offered him a job. So that is something, and it does not pinch by itself. When it pinches is when you see your colleagues, who probably have studied in the same college, uh, earning much better, and living a much better lifestyle than you. That is when you start questioning, what am I doing? So this is one of the sacrifices that you'll have to do. Another sacrifice that you might have to do is answer a lot of the questions to your society, that I mean, बेरोजगार हो गया. And entrepreneurship and बेरोजगारी में बहुत छोटा सा difference होता है. बेरोजगार जो होता है, वो they are not busy, they are बेरोजगार. Entrepreneurs are बेरोजगार, but they have a lot of work along with it. So that is one thing, that is one of the sacrifices that you'll have to do. uh, Professionally, I don't think you'll have to do a lot of sacrifice, because uh, once you are into entrepreneurship and you prove yourself, you kind of establish that you have done something on your own. There are a lot of companies, lot of organizations in India and across the world who are looking for people who are go-getters, who are who can stand on their own, right? So if you have somebody who has demonstrated, let's say if you have spent 2 years or 3 years in entrepreneurship and demonstrated that yes, you can do some things on your own, I don't think you'll have a problem in finding a job. So as and when you decide that now I want to find the job, I'm no more able to take anymore, I don't think you'll have to sacrifice on the salary. I'm pretty sure you'll get a salary better than somebody who has been working for 3 years. Uh, so these are some of the sacrifices or challenges that come in my mind. Of course, time is important. You have to work a lot. In office atmosphere, typically you don't work that much. There's a 5 day a week, 2 days holidays, 2 days, I mean Saturday Sunday is typically off. But in entrepreneurship, you just cannot take off. uh, and that is the reason many entrepreneurship burn out. So it's important to kind of allocate time for yourself, do a yoga or exercises, and even occasionally take a break and go somewhere to cool down. But you won't really find, you won't really be able to say that, today is Sunday and I won't work. It just won't be possible for you. So some of the sacrifices that I could think of. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you, sir. Next question. How to manage fund while starting a startup?
Sorry,
Sir, this is
Lavsha,
my
your voice broke in between.
Sir,
okay,
in
sir.
chat
Sir, in
box
chat
question
Okay,
box,
is
sir.
there.
question is there.
How to manage fund? Okay.
How to manage funds?
How to manage fund while starting a startup?
How to manage
This is
funds,
my
right? You
question.
mean money?
Yes, sir.
You mean
Yes.
money, right? Okay. How to manage funds? That's a very complicated question, actually. Uh, and I still struggle doing that. But broadly speaking, uh, you have to plan. You have to plan very well. Uh, so there are some of the fund that you start with, right? Maybe your friends invested in you. Maybe you yourself have worked for some time and generated some fund to kind of risk it with, and maybe you have some investors. It's very important to have a plan. It's very important to understand what your business is about, how much you're spending, uh, and how much are you hiring. So you know so, so you don't so there's a romantic idea in startup where you get investment invested and you make a good office and you hire a number of people and you boss around them. That typically doesn't happen. You do most of the work, and the work that you think can be done, uh, where you can contribute more, where somebody else can contribute more, that is where you spend money to hire people. You hire freelancers, you go very meager. And to start with, I am not one of those guys who say that entrepreneurs should not raise salary. You should start taking salary as soon as you get invested, or as soon as you start earning in your startup. But then there are times when you don't get invested, and then you don't um, are not able to hire, are not able to get customers. You're still trying out your idea. You should have a runway where which is for yourself, which is only for yourself, and you should pledge that you will never ever put this money in your startup. This is money for my own spending that I have earned. This is the money that I have for my medical expenses. Let's say if something happens to me, right? I do not want to go to hospital and start asking money for people just because I have a fever. So first of all, allocate that money for yourself, and then go as meager as possible, as frugal as possible to start with. जितना सस्ते में कर सकते हो करो. And then add people that are equally passionate, and this is very hard. This is probably one of the hardest thing to do, finding co-founders who are equally passionate. But add people who are ready to work, who believe in your ideas, and then get work done as much as possible through freelancers, through people who are working part time. Not Don't hire too many people full time. Don't add too many too many expenses to your sheet to start with, at least. So I don't. I mean, this is a difficult question. How do you manage funds? And I frankly, I have not come up with an answer. This is the best answer that I could think of. So I can see one question. How do you find that idea is good? Again, a very good question. Uh, Sarvesh. Sarvesh has asked this question. Uh, in short, at the early stage, how do you find the idea is good? Talk to people. Uh, Try to understand who might be your customer and your consumer, and talk to people. And then try to understand whether they would at any point of time pay for it. That is when you know your idea is good. if somebody can pay for it. Uh, and I know, I mean, there are all sort of success stories in Indian startup ecosystem where people say that Flipkart is still raising money and still surviving on investors' money, right? And then there are a lot of these startups which say that uh, monetization is not important, and then maybe your customer, if I can gather a lot of customers who do not pay me, even that is a good idea. But sooner or later, uh, I'm not asking you to go to the customer and start demanding for money right away. But I'm asking you to understand whether at some point of time you will make somebody's life so easy that they will pay you. It can be a small amount, and it can be like 10 years from now. But will it ever be possible that somebody will pay you, right? And this problem, and this is not a simple question, because it can get very difficult when you come to deep tech like AI, or like brain waves, and including in some cases IoT. Uh, but then it's not a impossible question to ask. So that is one test that I would do. Secondly, there is also something called a mom test, uh, where you ask your mom indirect questions, and then try to understand, if your mom was your customer, will she pay? Okay. So that is another way to understand how good your idea is. And lastly, I'll add that uh, it doesn't even matter how good your idea is. Uh, as I said, ideas are a dozen a dime. There is no deficiency of idea in the world. If you go to a cafe in Bangalore and you sit there for half an hour, I'm pretty sure, if you eavesdrop to the surrounding tables, I'm pretty sure you will hear 10 ideas. I can guarantee that. But idea is worth nothing without execution. You might have heard that from somewhere else as well, but this is true. Uh, it's one thing to come up with an idea, to find an idea that somebody will pay for at some point of time, and maybe even way more basic than that, if an idea can make someone's life simpler, and or add value to someone's life, uh, that is one test. But then uh, any idea that follows this test, or that can live up to this test, uh, is worth nothing unless you come up with a very very clear implementation strategy, iteration strategy. And in some cases, I can give you several examples of my own friends who started with an idea, who started their entrepreneurship journey with an idea, and now what they're doing, like 6 to 8 years from after the start, is completely different from what they were doing back then, right? And one of the examples that I would like to give is, there was a startup called Doxist. Uh, these days, you might have heard about Practo, but there was a startup called Doxist uh, some 8 years back. One of my friends started it in Bombay. The idea was simple. When you go to a doctor, you don't know how to find a doctor. So, can I search for a doctor online? And then, of course, can I book an appointment? Can I see the doctor's rating, etc., etc. So they were reasonably successful at that point of time. They also raised investment. You'll be surprised to know 8 years from then, from that point of time, what they are doing right now. Right now, they are making enterprise solution for saloons and spas. They have completely given up on the doctor's business. They have kept on pivoting, and now they are offering solutions, enterprise solution, and now they have, from B2C, they have become B2B, and thus offering solutions to spas and salons. So that is how the ideas evolve, right? Many times you understand that the idea that you started with was appealing, but there is deeper sense to it, that there are some other problems that you can solve. You go about. Uh, so yeah, again, I know there's a vague answer, but there is no clear answer, to be frank. Uh, okay.
Sir, good afternoon.
Hi.
Sir, myself, Princey Thapak. I am a B Farm student. Sir, my question is to you is that how to develop the skills being in a UG course that will excel when we will do entrepreneurship. What do you feel that skills are really very important?
Okay, very good question. Thanks for asking. Uh, So, coming to skill sets, there are so many skill sets in the world that if you start learning all of them, uh, you will you will just keep on learning for 70 years, and then you'll die. So there's absolutely no end to how many things you can learn. Specifically for entrepreneurship, there's absolutely no end to how much you can learn. There are some basic skills, of course. You should be able to learn how to. You should be very good with talking to people. uh, uh, right now I can probably talk to a few people and make sense, but it never was the case 10 years back. I was a very introvert. I'm still a very introverted guy. So I used to stammer when I talk. I used to shiver when I talk to people, especially people who are with well suit and boot, sitting in a investors in a VC firm. I used to be very bad at talking to them, and that is something that uh, I had to learn the hard way. So yes, talking to people, very important. Writing is very important. uh, I mean, in school we never pay attention to how well we read and write. Reading is very important. One of the things is, if you are into a domain, uh, very often what happens is we are developing an idea, and then you go some way into developing an idea only to discover that somebody has already developed this idea and it's already doing a good business. So reading, very thorough reading, very regular reading is very, very important. Writing is very important. Writing emails, you'll be surprised how many people in this world cannot write a good email. And a good email can be a difference between a yes and a no. And literally this has been the case with me. When I learned to write emails, I learned how short an email should be, how what are the words I should use in email, how to be polite and still not bend too much, how to be not outright and still to the point. Those are the things that helped me a lot. So yes, those are the skills that you need. But one of the skills that you definitely need is a go-getter attitude. No. So as I told you, when I started coding my first startup, which is Wishweb, I had absolutely no idea how a web server works. I am not kidding you. This is absolutely the case with me, that I have no idea how a web server works, which language to code in. I only knew C, जो कि college में पढ़ा था, and वो भी pass होने के लिए. Everybody, all of us, we do that, right? We just study something just to get pass, just to get the passing mark. I did the same. Yes, I had no idea how to code in C, even though I passed a few exams in C. Uh, you have to be an absolute go-getter. Yeah, I have a problem. I'll do whatever it takes to solve this. And some people say that some people are better with learning than other people. Some people learn very fast, other people learn very slow. I frankly do not believe that. I think there are only two kind of people. One, which dig very deep into the problem, do whatever it takes, lage रहते हैं. मतलब if you understand, if you want to create a program, a particular program, and you don't know what language to code in, there'll be one person that will go all in and day out to understand what is the best technology and then learn that best technology and code. The other person will say, I do not know the technology, let me try to hire somebody to code. No, I would much rather invest my money on the first person, even though the first person might take probably a few weeks more than the second person. So in short, you have to be go-getter. You have to do whatever it takes to solve. Now I am a techie, and technology is what I do the best. Uh, but I had to learn a lot of non-technical skills, like uh, how to make a pitch deck, how to make a presentation, how to make cash flow analysis. I had to be very good with cash flow analysis, because then only I can project what is my expense. I had to learn accounting. I had to learn what are the legalities associated with forming a company, forming a non